Welcome to the Holiness Today podcast. On this episode, I have a conversation with DeAnn Turley, who works in legal services at the Global Ministry Center. DeAnn Turley does trainings for Ministry Safe, for districts, and for the local church. We're here with DeAnn Turley, Legal Services Assistant, and you get to work with Michael Thompson and Joe Miller at the Global Ministry Center. So you have a fun job there, I guess.
Yes, I do.
You get to work with two lawyers.
Yes.
How did you get involved in that? Did you study law in your background? You're bivocational. You work as a pastor, but how did you end up working in legal services to get us started here?
Yeah, that's an maybe interesting story. Mike Thompson was our interim pastor at our church on three different occasions, while my husband and I were on staff there as associates. And so during that time, he and Jody became good friends, and this opportunity came up while I felt that there was a shift that was going to take place in our lives, and certainly did not expect this to be it. To work with two lawyers, and I don't have any background in legal services. So I said yes because I enjoy working with Mike so much, but had no idea that it would take me down this path of working with child protection in the church, or getting to know all of the ins and outs, or at least some of the ins and outs of legal services for the Church of the Nazarene.
And something I've heard Mike say multiple times, and I would assume it's still true, that intellectual property and child protection are two of the things that probably take up most of his time. As you got started as his assistant, at what point did you kind of gravitate towards dealing with the child protection side of it? What was kind of stirring in you that moved you in that direction?
Yeah, it definitely didn't take long because I began to answer the phones for legal services. And so most of the calls that I received were due to needing legal advice or pastoral advice on how to handle situations of abuse in the church. And because all of those phone calls were coming through, I would say it was probably 8 months into working in legal services that I began to ask more questions, like what can we do to help resource our pastors and our districts, our regions in this area, so that we can take a stronger stand against abuse in the church.
Mhm. And can you just share a little bit, what is the background? I know a little bit of it, but the background between the relationship between Ministry Safe and the Church of the Nazarene and how that partnership got in there. And then maybe just a really brief, what is Ministry Safe? What is it that you're working with to help resource pastors?
Yeah. So it's been between 10 and 12 years that when Michael Thompson started searching um, for help in the area of abuse prevention and awareness training, when he got connected with Greg Love and Kimberly Norris through some seeking legal advice for churches and different locations. And so it's been about 10 to 12 years of relationship between the Church of the Nazarene and Ministry Safe. And you asked about what Ministry Safe is.
Yeah, just a
Yeah, so it is training and prevention awareness in the area, specifically in abuse of children and minors and vulnerable adults in the church. So how to raise awareness, how to tools on how to prevent it happening in our churches, and also there's an aspect of how do we respond when we hear of abuse, and so it's kind of all encompassing. But Ministry Safe was birthed out of this. About two lawyers, Kimberly Norris and Greg Love, who serve families and children who have been abused. And through all of that, they have over 25 years of experience in not only representing victims, but also helping ministries and schools um, prevent it happening in their places of ministry.
And the Church of the Nazarene adopted that at the Global Ministry Center. But
Mhm.
the adoption of it at the Global Ministry Center doesn't mean that every district or local church is adopting that. But what is the relationship from your office
Mhm.
to the district, and you see it, but in the local church? So it's not a compliance that the Global Ministry has asked the district to do it because of our polity, but what is your key role in that, and what does that relationship look like? If you can share how many districts are coming on board and doing these, adopting Ministry Safe as a standard.
We'll be right back with the rest of this episode. But did you know you can receive credit for listening to Holiness Today podcasts? Holiness Today podcasts qualify for lifelong learning with the Church of the Nazarene. To register for lifelong learning, simply go to learning.nazarene.org. The Lifelong Learning Registry provides Nazarene ministers the opportunity to record and report their efforts to develop and maintain a pattern of lifelong learning. Every Nazarene minister is encouraged to engage in a variety of lifelong learning activities. The code for Holiness Today podcast will be listed in the show description. This code can be utilized for this episode and any previous episode you wish to listen to. Thank you for being a listener and sharing in the ministry of the Church of the Nazarene. Now back to the rest of your episode.
We have many of our districts use Ministry Safe or other avenues, other trainings and ways to prevent abuse. And a lot of our churches are participating in Ministry Safe. So my role, well, at the global level, we cannot say you have to. We cannot require Ministry Safe or any other specific tool on how to prevent abuse in the church, but we can strongly recommend. So that's what we do. That's my role. My role with districts and local churches is one on the area of prevention and awareness. Having conversations. It's really just having conversations on how we at the Global Ministry Center can resource the districts and local churches with the appropriate ways to prevent abuse happening in the church. And also awareness to know that unfortunately, because we know the statistics that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys would be abused before the age of 18, that the reality is that as pastors take the pulpit on Sunday mornings, as they look out to the people that they serve, the people that God has entrusted that pastor with to shepherd and care for, most of them, if not all, have either been sexually abused themselves or have a spouse that has experienced abuse, a child or a friend. And because of that, that just raising awareness that this is an issue that the church needs to understand the effects of abuse and how we can prevent it also in our spaces. So that's just kind of been my goal is to have these conversations with leaders and whether it's on the district level or local church level, to help them understand the issue, understand the problem, and then steps on how can we implement Ministry Safe in our districts and in our churches to make it possible that we say truly not on our watch.
That 1 in 4 and 1 in 6 number,
Mhm.
is that a United States data? Is that across the United States?
That is across the United States, yes.
And I'm
Mhm.
sure it would be so very good.
And that's just the ones that have disclosed their abuse. There are
Yeah.
many.
Yeah.
In fact, 2 out of 3 people um, do not disclose their abuse until adulthood, if
Yeah.
ever, if
Yeah.
ever. So, mhm.
In the complexity of getting that data, it would be hard to probably figure out what that's like in the church. But from what you've heard, is it similar in the church? I mean, are the numbers about the same, or is it less with church families? I don't know if that's even something that comes out of the data on that.
It's across the board. It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like you said, so when you're preaching on Sunday morning, knowing that in your audience, that's a reality.
Right, right. And
That
so when if you think about it, if there were any other subject matter that affected 100% of our congregations, it would be addressed.
yeah,
It would be addressed from the pulpit, probably repeatedly. And yet I wonder how many messages you've heard on sexual abuse in the
yeah,
church, whether it's awareness,
yeah,
prevention, or healing and hope for those who
yeah.
have experienced abuse.
So how is this affected, obviously spiritually, when you're dealing with this? I used to work in social work, and I remember um, dealing with situations like this just being very spiritually dark. Honestly, things I had to pray through and seek hope in, and probably counseling would be probably something that is helpful in dealing with this. But how has these kind of numbers and looking at these things in your day-to-day job affected your local ministry? Has it changed the way you've preached your sermons? Has it changed the way you've thought about who is in your audience? I don't know if you can share about that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, even before Stuart and I became lead pastors at Victory Hills, while Mike was still the interim pastor, I preached a sermon on the effects of abuse and oppression, and because of the phone calls um, that I've had, the prayers that I've prayed over the phones with pastors and people who have reported their abuse. Um, I felt it was important to preach it from the pulpit. I can't just tell pastors. On the global level, it could be tempting to give all of the resources, but then never put it into practice myself because it is difficult. It's a difficult message to preach. It's a difficult thing to walk out and to realize that this kind of thing does happen to the people that we love and care for, and it does happen in the church. That it's a difficult thing to reconcile in your brain, but unless we bring it to light, unless we allow God to shine light on those areas, then we don't give God the opportunity um, to bring healing and hope. So we have to allow God to bring it to light in order to receive hope and help and healing. So as pastors, um, I believe there's no better way to show that we care and have compassion and also live into our call to be shepherd than to protect our people in this way and give space for healing.
Part of that protection, obviously, in Ministry Safe is and again, I'm driving these questions from the website ministrysafe.com, ministrysafe.com/Nazarene.
Mhm.
Plug. But a safety system. What does a safety system for a local church include? What does that mean? If you could just talk about that a little bit. Awareness training, skillful screening, policies and procedures, background checks, monitoring and oversight. Is that a whole comprehensive package that a local church
Mhm.
accesses when they do Ministry Safe?
Yes, yeah. So when you are a member of Ministry Safe, you have access to all of that. Um, you have access to skillful screening, even training on how to skillfully screen your employees and volunteers. And that's something that that's the number one factor as you are receiving requests for volunteering with children and teens, vulnerable adults, even ushers and greeters, anyone who has a name tag or has any sort of leadership in our churches, who we want to know who you are. And the skillful screening does a great job of that, requesting references and from people that they know, including pastors, and where did you attend church, um, and then questions for an interview. Many churches just say, "Oh, you want to work? You want to volunteer with kids? Fantastic! We're short a volunteer today. How would you like to go now?" Um, Rather than thinking through who we're inviting
Mm.
into
Yeah.
leadership with our children. So that is an important aspect that that Ministry Safe provides. And then, of course, background checks are extremely important. They're foundational in the protection of our children, but we also have to recognize that it's not um,
Yeah.
a fail-safe aspect of screening our people because most 90%, and this is from the Ministry Safe website, 90% of predators never encounter the justice system, which
Mm.
means the criminal background check
Won't catch
um,
that.
won't catch 90% of
Yeah.
um, of offenders. Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where the training comes in, right?
Yeah,
Because
for
we
sure.
want to have eyes to see and ears to hear the behaviors of a predator, of an offender.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For the background checks, so does it operate as a subscription? The local church pays for a subscription and then they
Yes.
have it annually. Is that how that works?
Yeah. So there's an annual subscription. And that provides access to a plethora of resources, including samples of policies and procedures,
Mm.
even third-party rentals of your churches,
Mm.
awareness training, of
Yeah.
course, and not just for volunteers, but also awareness training for parents and all those who serve, um, including peer-to-peer abuse training. And then the samples of the policies, procedures, even camps. So if anyone is the leader of their district camp, it's a great resource because you don't have to reinvent the wheel to protect children.
Yeah.
You get all of those things available to
Yeah.
you. And then the training, there is a small cost for each training that is sent out. There's a cost for the background checks on top of the yearly subscription. But there are ways that the subscription or membership fee can be adjusted. If it's a small church or new church plant and you want to get started off right, um, I would suggest calling Ministry Safe because they're about protecting children and those who serve them, and that's their passion. So they make things work for our small churches too.
Yeah. So a part of that training, with that training, are there certain types of training tailored to different roles in the church? Training for volunteers versus training for lead pastors, or is it all kind of a um, is there, I guess, is there specialized training for different situations or whatever the targeted group is?
Yeah, there are specific trainings. The awareness and prevention training is standard for
Mhm.
everybody. But there are different trainings, such as the skillful screening process, getting trained in that. There's a background check. Like, how do you know what level of background check you should get? What do background checks actually retrieve? So there's training for that. There's also Ministry Safe Institute for lead pastors and district superintendents that I would highly recommend because it's an in-depth seminary level training for those who are lead pastors or heads over ministries. So that's a great thing that they offer. Yeah.
And obviously, we don't want to motivate people through punishment. We'd rather motivate them through reinforcement. But obviously, the reinforcing principle here is who doesn't want to protect children and have a safe
Right.
environment. But the punishment side is uh, obviously if abuse happens on location and you're a lead pastor, just the cost, the legal cost. I don't know if you can share the onerous cost. I know Michael's talked about that before, but um, just things like knowing that you need to report in a timely manner and all of that. But if I don't know if you can share any of that, not to scare our listeners into into getting on administrative, but a little bit, if you could share on that,
Right.
just the immense cost in not having a policy and procedure in place that could happen.
Oh yeah. Um, I can't remember the exact cost of and I don't know, Nate, if you have that information in front of you. Mike has shared it so many times, but it is in the millions,
Yeah,
multi-millions
yeah,
of dollars of litigation if and that's if it's settled, and it's even more. I think it's $10 million if it is settled, and if it goes to court, it's I
yeah.
mean, it's really endless the amount of money that they can um, try to get in a litigation if it goes to court. Yeah, so it's devastating for the church monetarily and spiritually. There are church splits that happen because of it. I mean, and if you think about, and then the way that is handled, you mentioned reporting, making sure that you're reporting in a timely manner. A big reason for abuse victims when abuse has happened in the church, that they would either fall away from the Lord completely or just leave the church is because of the way that it is handled. So understanding how to respond in the uh, to a victim, how to give proper resources and have on hand the resources available in your area for counseling um, is really important for victims of abuse.
And you and I, as Global Ministry Center employees, are mandated reporters. That's just part of our role. But I should know this answer. I think I know the answer. But is every ordained elder in the Church of the Nazarene automatically a mandated reporter?
Yes,
That's correct. Is that right?
yes, yes.
What is a mandated reporter for our listeners? I'm hoping our elders know, but what is a mandated reporter? What does that mean if you have that on you?
Yeah, so a mandated reporter, first of all, there are some states where every adult is a mandated reporter in that state. So it's important to know your state's laws regarding mandated reporting. But mandated reporting means that if you know about abuse and you do not report it, that you are held liable in the litigation of a court case. Um, so you can also be held liable, having jail time and very steep fines if you do not report abuse. It was a very serious matter. And in the Church of the Nazarene, you would be subject to discipline if you are clergy and you hide abuse or do not report abuse. You can be held liable for discipline, even having to surrender your credentials or having them taken away. and not being able to serve the Lord in the way that He has called us, if you do not report abuse and it is found out.
And the Church of the Nazarene is zero tolerance for
Yes.
this. What does that mean? What does the Church of the Nazarene mean when they say they have a zero tolerance policy for this? Once your credentials are surrendered for an issue related to this, there's zero tolerance. Is that it's not? There's no way to get that back. Is that my understanding?
Yes. And zero tolerance doesn't just have to do for clergy, it also has to do for the layperson as well. So the zero tolerance is if you have abused anyone, a minor, then you cannot serve in the Church of the Nazarene in any way. So whether it's being a Sunday school teacher or a custodian or working at the sound booth as a greeter, none of that is possible if you have abused children in the past.
And if a minister is listening now to our podcast and they say, "Well, I'm scared enough. I'm curious." I mean, obviously, I'm going to put the website in the show notes and link, but would you recommend a local church pastor reach out to their district first to see if they have a ministry safe program? What would be the ways in which, if a pastor is listening, that they would get involved with ministry safe?
So they can, as a lead pastor, begin a membership with Ministry Safe. But I would also recommend talking to your district because they may have some other resources available as well. They may have some instructions on for their district, how they implement Ministry Safe. But each local church should have their own Ministry Safe account. But the district may have some resources to help with that as well. So it's always good to loop in your district regarding that. And you might be able to help your district in raising awareness and creating trainings and things like that for district activities, and you may be able to help some other local churches.
And some of the questions that might come up with this, questions you've probably heard before, should everyone that is working with kids have a ministry safe training at some level? I think the simple answer is yes, but I think maybe we don't think about that. Every volunteer working with kids, maybe share, you've done it already, but just again, how Ministry Safe helps out, not just with training up our elders, but really anyone in the church that is working in any volunteer capacity.
Right. If you think about your Sundays or your Wednesdays, and who encounters children, I think first of all, if your church has greeters or a security team, your ushers, a good question to think about is if we want our children or teens to be involved in worship ministry,
Mhm.
in the media ministry, and what about in missions and NMI?
Mhm.
So really, it's broad, and I would also think that churches would want their church board to have eyes to see and ears to hear, to be aware, and not only aware but advocate for the safety of children and teens, and vulnerable adults. So those would be staff, board members, other ministry leaders that don't maybe serve in the children's wing, if you have a
Mhm.
children's wing,
Mhm.
but yet minors are involved in those ministries. At least we hope so, because
Yeah.
multi-generational, intergenerational ministry is so important. Um, but also, of course, yes, those people who are volunteering in the church nursery and those who are volunteering in children's ministry specifically should, of course, have training and the whole go through the whole five-part system of beginning volunteering in children's ministry.
In dealing with this, you're looking at a lot of negative things, very dark things, but through your work with Ministry Safe at the Global Ministry Center or in the local church through implementation of Ministry Safe, have you seen a tangible difference? Can you share any data or maybe anecdotal stories or, just personal? Have you seen a difference in the implementation of Ministry Safe across our denomination?
Yeah, a couple of examples. One, I was able to go to a district and sit down with the district superintendent, the camp directors, children's ministry, and NYI for the district. And we saw such great improvement in their implementation and being unified in their stand against abuse. It was phenomenal because they were each doing a great job in their own departments, but coming together around a table and just having conversations, they saw the need to have just a united front to protect children, and so we saw just a great encouragement that they weren't by themselves trying to implement for their various ministries, but also in that district, the district raised money for the camp, $42,000 for the camp to improve their dorms so that they can be safer for children.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was just really blessed by that, really encouraged. And then I'm also beginning to have conversations with Global Missions and our USA Canada office on how we can better resource our people all over the world in the area of protecting children against abuse. So I'm really excited about the ways that our people are hungry to for the Church of the Nazarene to truly be a safe space for our children and vulnerable adults.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I would imagine it's a like all marketing, it's a battle of making people aware. But when elders are made aware, I'm sure they're thinking, "Yep, we need this." I mean, it seems like almost a no-brainer that because it's going to help them have a safer and compliant, just as you put it, you see yourself as a shepherd, it's going to help protect your flock.
Mhm.
But have you run into many pastors that maybe, I mean, I guess probably anyone that has not heard of it, but for the most part, do you see that there already is kind of some sort of system in place, or are you running into local churches that really haven't even thought through a safety system? What does that look like when you engage different local churches?
Yeah, I've seen a whole spectrum of
Yeah.
responses in that regard. Some that are doing a phenomenal job already, and they just want to make sure that they are up to date on everything that they need to be doing and have all
Hmm.
the resources they need to have. And then I have others who don't even really haven't seen the need for it until something happens in their church. And so they just like I said before, if you want to volunteer, fantastic. Someone called in sick today. And why shouldn't we trust the people who are in our congregations? And because that's our natural tendency. But the problem is preferential offenders. They know that churches are like that. They know that people in church are full of grace and love to forgive and give second chances and tend to trust and believe the people that walk through their doors that they are who they say they are. So, and they depend on that. So as I've been having conversations, those who haven't yet implemented any kind of policy or procedure for their churches, once I present the risk, um, that this absolutely could happen in their church, and the reality is that really it will present itself in every church at some point, statistically speaking. Um, it is something that we need to prepare ahead of time for rather than trying to clean up a mess afterwards.
And you mentioned that there, just in your last answer, but it's a reminder, and it's really, really hard to think about. But predators are not going to go to places where there are no children. They are going to go to places where there are children, and so it's almost. Um, I'm sure for you, it's very difficult knowing the knowledge that you do, and not being skeptical of everyone that walks in your door. But you
Mhm.
have to have a level of skepticism as a shepherd to protect your flock, because that's where the children are. I mean, that predators are not going to go look for children where there's no children. But
Mhm.
And then another thing you mentioned as well is that uh, the awareness of this is something that is going to cause people to. I mean, really, honestly, I've run into pastors, and again, I didn't work directly with ministers say, but I've run into pastors who just hadn't even thought about these things. It's just something we don't want to think about. But as you said, if you could share in more depth, but you're saying every local church at some point will deal with an issue related to this at some point in their history. Does that mean every pastor, or does that mean just every local church? Where does that data come from? What is that? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if you look at just looking at statistical probability, um, every church will encounter an offender. So, if we know that statistically this is a very real possibility, that sometime in our church history, in our local church history, there either has been or will be an offender that walks through our doors looking to gain access to children, then we need to know the right fences, the right protection to put around our churches as shepherds. It is our responsibility to take care and protect our sheep.
Yeah,
And so it's not, I think that's another misconception is it's not the job of a children's pastor to do this. It's
yeah,
the job of the lead pastor to take ownership and really understand the responsibility that they have to protect the sheep and to be able to spot the wolves in sheep clothing because you can't see it. Um, the predators, offenders, they do not have the same physical appearance as they look like one of us.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
we have to be aware of what the grooming
yeah,
process looks like,
yeah,
um, because offenders don't only groom children, they also groom the caretakers, those who are
yeah,
responsible for
yeah.
them. And so her goal is not to make everyone suspicious of every person that walks
Right.
in the door, but we do have to be realistic and
Yeah,
realize that the risk is there. But the good news is if we do have eyes to see and ears to hear, then and we're prepared in advance, then we can absolutely prevent abuse in our churches if we are unified in this effort of protecting those that we serve.
what would be an example of an implementation of monitoring and oversight that would mitigate or reduce risk of this? Like when you say the district you're on raised $40,000 to change the dormitories, what does that mean? What are some tangible differences that just really help reduce risk of predators
Mhm. Yeah,
infiltrating a
so
system?
so one of the things is first of all just having real conversations with what the church looks like. Every church has a lot of doors, have a lot of places that people could hide away and be behind closed doors. So it could be even something as simple as looking at your doors and saying, we could put a window in our doors.
Mhm.
Um, and then what about how many adults? What's the adult to child ratio? What are we seeing that where are we seeing places that we can improve the protection of children because um, having two adults with children reduces risk. And having people, trusted adults who have been through training, ushers walking around, monitoring, looking at the doors that are closed and seeing, what's going on in this room or that room, things like that. The A big thing is creating policies that work for our local churches. And like I said, Ministry Safe provides sample policies that we can go off of. They're in Word document form, and so you can adjust. Um, but we, but I, the great thing about Ministry Safe is they provide pretty much all of the resources you need in order to implement great safety policies and procedures for our churches. Something that we've done in our church, and I suggest to every church and every district, is to create a safety team.
Mm.
So that it's not just the children's pastor trying to come up with all of the policies, but we're looking at it from different perspectives. How NMI or NDI come into play with the protection of children, and for our church we have a multicultural church, so having representation from the different cultures is also important, and as we prepare policies and procedures to make the church safe. So I would say that'd probably be
Yeah.
number two. Number one is getting Ministry Safe
Yeah. Yeah.
access, and then number two would be creating a safety team so that it's not one person trying to develop a robust safety system. That's overwhelming. But if
Yeah.
we, many hands make light work. So having a group of 5, 6, 7 people all looking at the policies and procedures, hiring processes, volunteer processes for screening, all of that. And then that safety team becomes the safety team of the church. So if you're not sure what to do with something that you just saw that looked a little bit suspicious, again, having those conversations, although difficult and uncomfortable, can really bring to light. Like if you see something suspicious, the other person might say, I saw something too the other day that just made me feel a little uncomfortable about that person too. Maybe we should talk to the pastor about this. Or maybe that looks like it's actually reportable to the state. So yeah, it's those are the top couple things that are helpful.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you've done trainings already with districts. You're planning on doing more, my
Mhm.
understanding. But
Mhm.
in working with UCRO and global missions, are you also going to be kind of coming up with maybe some marketing behind that or social media? I know we're doing this here now on the podcast, and this will hopefully raise uh, awareness as well. But what are some of the other things that you're doing to get the awareness out about Ministry Safe?
Yeah, we have several things in process. One of them is that we are working with Global Communications to create a page on Nazarene.org specifically dedicated to Nazarene Safe. We had one a long time ago. Now it just sends you directly to Ministry Safe, but our goal is to have some practical resources, denomination specific,
Hmm.
on child protection. And when I say child protection, that also includes teens and vulnerable adults as well, just our vulnerable population. So our goal is to have a pamphlet that discusses that you could take to your church board and say, here's Ministry Safe, here's Nazarene Safe, and the resources that are available. And I think we need to implement this. So it gives you something that you can present to your church to begin the process of protecting children and implementing Ministry Safe in your church. Also, we're hoping to do some webinars, just some quick tips and tricks on how to implement child protection in your church and on your district. Um, we are. I'm also in conversation, like I said, with global missions on how we can resource um, missionaries. What does this look like on the mission field? How do we report grooming when we are missionaries serving in another country? So how can we resource them and help them to navigate those waters in a different cultural context than here in the USA and Canada? So those are just a few things on what we will be doing. We're hoping that that the resources that we have that include Ministry Safe specific resources will help our people down the right path in abuse awareness and prevention.
DeAnn, if any of our listeners want more information, are they able to contact you directly, or what's the best way to get a hold of to get answers about Ministry Safe?
Yes, yep, you can call me directly. You can email legal services at legal@nazarene.org, and that will it comes to our whole legal team. And then you can also email me directly at dturley@nazarene.org. And you can also call the Global Ministry Center and reach me that way as well. I'd be happy to help anyone who has questions
Yeah,
or needs to talk about something that they've experienced.
yeah. What do you hope to see, I guess, in the next few years as it relates to Ministry Safe? If you could say, this is what my goals would be for this program 5 years from now, what do you think that would look like for you?
Um, my goal is that this would become a priority for our denomination globally, because we are all about making Christ-like disciples. That's one thing that I love about the Church of the Nazarene. We're all about reaching those who are marginalized. And in that ministry, we encounter a lot of hurt and abuse is one of the top hurts and wounds that we will encounter. And so my hope and my goal is that we would be able to provide resources for our churches and our denominations to raise awareness and to have the resources needed in order to bring help, hope, and healing for those who have experienced abuse.
Ian, how can we be praying? How can our listeners be praying for you? I'm sure it's heavy going through some of this stuff, but specifically, how can our listeners be praying for you?
Really, just continued wisdom and discernment, um, prayer for the conversations and meetings that we'll be having globally. I hope that it becomes more than just me and legal services. That we can develop a team that can produce good training and resources for our denomination globally. So just the paths and opportunities would that God would open up those doors and and give us his ideas. We don't want this just to be an us trying to do the best that we can, but we want it to be a ministry that is led by the Holy Spirit and empowered by the Holy Spirit, because it's God who brings about change.
Thank you for sharing this time. I knew it would be a tough conversation, but an important one, and I hope many people listen to this and share it and get a hold of you, because this is a very important need. I thought the most chilling thing you said that I had not realized, that it's not a matter of if this happens, it's when it happens for most churches.
Yeah.
Very chilling. But thank you for sharing this time.
Yes, thank you for inviting me. I'm thankful for the opportunity to talk about this subject, even though it's not pretty. Like you said, it is very important. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share.
Thank you for listening to the Holiness Today podcast. If you enjoyed this production and wish to hear more, visit holinesstoday.org/podcast or find us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts.